Welcome to Feature Flagging with New Relic and Split. Let's jump right in and hear from Steve Zorn, Director of Partner Solutions and Strategy at New Relic.
One of the things we've seen in the market, that really a trend, is organizations and industries are really pushing ahead to become digital business, right? And really the need for that is based on the fact that, we're in the age of the customer, right? Customers drive expectations. And in doing so, organizations and industries really need to evolve. And if we look at what are the key things for companies to become thriving digital business, there's really three components: improved uptime and performance, greater scale and efficiency, and increased speed and agility, right? And if you look at how organizations are doing this, what we're seeing, right, is industry customers are moving from on-prem monolithic apps and moving into a cloud-based architecture. Really, from a cloud, they're looking at modernizing and moving to microservice architectures, and really implementing DevOps culture within the organization, really to improve their speed and time to market for new services to really meet the expectations of those customers. What we also see is really very important, right? One of the key components is that, as we talk about, as companies evolve and move into the cloud and move into microservices, what we've seen is, there's a balance between speed and complexity, right? We're moving from an on-prem environment where you're doing a single patch a year on a database and a couple of pushes to your application, and now moving into a cloud, modern, continuous development and pushing new changes daily, if not thousands of times a day, right? We see organizations that are making these changes on the fly. Now, if we look at that, right, how do you minimize the risk associated with all these changes, right? And very important topic that we're going to cover today is how really New Relic and observability really brings down the risk in terms of these changes, right? And as well as you'll see with Talia and her conversation, is really minimizing the risk by utilizing a subset of people to actually do those testings and understanding what those changes mean to that end user. Next slide, please. Right, and as I talked about, really, if we look at how companies are monitoring on-prem, right, there's different teams, and they really have this swivel. I call it the swivel chair approach, where we see the finger pointing, right? Hey, it's a database problem, it's an app problem, it's a network problem, right? As you move into a cloud operating model and really modern and become a thriving digital business, the way you look and monitor needs to change, right? That evolution of change is going to become more rapid. There's going to be a lot more changes that are pushed out. And really, if you don't understand how those changes are affecting that end user, it's potentially a loss of customer, right? People don't have the patience anymore. There's too many apps on the App Store. People will just move on to the next one or the next organization or next best in the industry. And so what companies are doing is really evolving the way they monitor and moving into more of an observability pattern. And how that is done, right, is, if you can go to the next slide, please, Talia. So what is getting in the way? What we have seen, right, is there's a couple things, right? The first one I'll talk about is really that pricing model. A lot of times, pricing model gets in the way because everything should be instrumented the way we look at it. If there's a single point of failure within that environment, so for example, if someone can't log into an app and we don't understand the application, or something is not monitored, there's a point of failure within that process, right? And I would say the other key component is that connection of data, right? How do you contextualize the data that you bring in? Right? There should be different components, but all of it should be contextualized, meaning that you shouldn't have a data swamp or just a huge log that you really don't understand where the actual pinpointing of the issue is. So if there is a loss or downtime, or there's an end user experience, you really have to pinpoint where that issue is. Next slide, please. So it is really time for a new approach. And the way I look at this is really moving away from a reactive mode. Hey, on-prem, what we've seen is that organizations, what we see is I call it the red light, green light, yellow light. Everything's great. Things are down, and then go look for where it is. To move into a proactive, right? To really understand, have everything instrumented, be proactive in your understanding of if there's any issues, and really allows you to understand or ask the question of what happened and where is my issue, and be able to pinpoint that. Now, one of the key components that I really like about Split, and I'll just talk about briefly, I'll put this in here, is what they allow us to do is really have a subset of customers, right? Is allow you to actually really bring that to the next level, right? And push out changes to a subset of users, which means that you can actually do testing, lowering that risk, as I said, right? Is that complexity, pushing out changes, and even minimizing the risk even further by giving that set of capabilities to only a subset of users and really understanding that issue and be proactive if there is an issue within that. Next slide, please. So from a New Relic perspective, I wanted to spend a minute because I know a lot of people in the industry, know New Relic as an APM vendor, and that's where we did start out. New Relic started out in the application performance management space, really understanding key components as it relates to the application, coding, changes in code. We've then pushed into the end user experience, really understanding how users are connecting into that application through the browser and mobile devices. We also rounded out with our infrastructure agent, which is an agnostic-based infrastructure. So meaning that if you're running on-prem, in the cloud, any multi-cloud, we're able to bring in data into our platform. And then finally, our synthetics, which is our proactive monitoring. So running test scripts, checking API gateways, and really that proactive monitoring. And for years, that was our capabilities was based in those 5 products. Over the last couple of years, we've evolved into a platform, and the reason being is, right, as we've seen customers and pretty much the trend in the market is that evolution and transformation into cloud-based architectures. We've realized that having multiple tools and technologies is very hard for organizations really to evolve and transform. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to open up, essentially be able to help organizations bring in all their data. So the way we look at it now is we're an open platform, meaning that we can bring in pretty much any data from across an organization or an enterprise, and we call those entities. So that could be CI/CD data, it could be ticketing data from ServiceNow, for example, and we can bring in open traces and logs from different tools. Pretty much the full melt, as we call it, metrics, events, logs, and traces. And what we do is that we contextualize that data. So let's take an example, right? If we have, an organization gets a business requirement, they move through development of a new feature, functionality, they push that into production. And let's say a user, after they push that, a user tries to log into the application now through a mobile device and is not able to access the application. Now, with the New Relic One Platform and potentially Split, right, using their capabilities and pushing it out to a subset of users, for example, is that now through New Relic, you can actually see, okay, there was actually a push because we have a connection in from our CI/CD pipeline. We can actually see that there's a ServiceNow ticket opened up by that user, and we're able to contextualize that data to actually see, hey, the user is not able to log in. There's a service ticket. We know there was a push. And the actual issue is now in my log or my traces. See, so just an example of how we were able to contextualize that data through a real world example. Next slide, please. A couple of months ago, we actually changed in terms of in the past we had different pricing models, but we've changed in terms of our pricing model. But now essentially there's 3 products that make up New Relic. Really, the telemetry data platform, which is essentially how we bring in ingest data from across an enterprise. So it's not just by agent now; it's by data from it's called TDP. Full stack observability, meaning that we open up our entire platform to the end users. So we allow pretty much any product within our stack that people are able to use, and then the applied intelligence, AI ops, and things of that nature is essentially sits on top. And so that's my section. With that, I will hand it over to Talia.
Cool. Okay, so Steve talked a little bit about New Relic, so I just wanted to go over Split very briefly. So Split is a feature delivery platform, and there's kind of 3 big parts to Split. So managing, monitoring, and experimenting. So with Split's UI, you can manage feature flags, perform gradual rollouts, add dynamic configurations, and then also add monitoring. So why do we want to add monitoring? Like, why is it important to know what's going on? Because you want to be able to respond to incidents in production, right? And when responding to an incident, you want to start with the basic, like what, when, why. So what was the issue? When did it happen? When did it start? And why is it happening? And you want to be able to use all the data that you have to create impact and measure that through your KPIs. And so when you do feature delivery with Split, you can roll out functionality into like different percentages of your customer base so that when you release a new feature, you can turn it on for a percentage of customers. And then that enabling technology that allows you to do that is called a feature flag. So you can roll out a flag to 10% of your user base and then understand that impact of the feature for your users. And then you can use the Split and New Relic integration. They work really nicely together to give developers a more holistic view of how the feature flags affect their entire state. So basically, we're in this world where we need to build features faster, right? We need a way to use data and measure the impact of our features to guide investment decisions. We can't just come up with an idea out of the blue and implement it. We have to have data to back it up. And so the Split and New Relic integration helps developers and product teams and DevOps teams know exactly how changes to their application's features affect every aspect of their customer service. So there's two parts of the integration that we're going to go through today. So most of what we're going to talk about today is the steps to enhance New Relic agent information so that it brings back the context of a split with every record. And so this is the capability which would let you distinguish response times between one version and another, for instance. So if you're rolling out a feature to 10% of your users, you really want to see a line on the graph for just that 10% separate from the overall number. And then you also have another part of the integration that pushes feature flag targeting rule changes into New Relic so that you could do queries like which flags have been changed in the last hour, and you can see details like, Talia changed the flag from 5% of users to 30% of users. And then you can use this audit log information to annotate graphs each time a feature flag setting is changed. So New Relic can provide you with these insights to your system's performance, like way beyond the basics of monitoring response times and error rates. There's just so much more. So you can add custom instrumentation that allows you to track these metrics and specific metadata, so such as feature flag impression data that you'll get from Split, and that basically you'll get from this analysis, grouping, filtering, everything that you need to make really informed decisions with your data. And then with feature flags with Split, you can use those capabilities to kind of close the loop for your feature rollout. So by pushing feature flagging metadata into New Relic, you can understand exactly the impact of a feature change across any metric you care about in real time. So in this demo, we're going to show you how that works. So we're going to take a look at two examples. So in the first example, let's say you're a New Relic user and you're asked to launch this new product, and you want to implement an early access program for a subset of customers. So you create this feature flag from Split, you go to the Split UI, and you want to do a controlled rollout of this feature. So a controlled rollout is just another name for percentage rollout, Canary release. They all mean the same thing. So it means you just start out with a small subset of users, and then you will slowly increment that to a larger subset as your confidence increases. And you do this because just in case something goes wrong, you don't want to affect your entire population. So you can see here that I've turned this on for 5% of my users initially. And so it might look something like this. So you might see a step function or some sort of drastic change in your graph. And so what feature flags let you do is decouple deploy from release and change the exposure when you're ready. So in this case, someone's exposed to a feature that's causing latency issues, right? So this is a latency chart. And let's say that I'm an on-call engineer who works on this service and I'm on call and I get paged and I look at the logs and I see that response times are pretty slow in production. So I open up New Relic and I see in my dashboard for my service to try to understand what's happening, and I immediately see that the 95th percentile latencies, the P95s, are up dramatically. You can see here starting around 2:30. So normally what I would do is send a Slack message or open a war room and try to figure out like what happened, like why is this happening in production? This would like distract a lot of people. It's also just not the most efficient process, right? Like, wouldn't it be nice if without leaving New Relic, you could know what feature flag change was made at 2:30, right? So this is what the audit log integration does, is send all those changes into New Relic so you could see them with queries or overlay them on graphs. So to set that up, from New Relic, you're going to go to Manage Data and find your account ID and key, and then go into Split, add a New Relic integration, and then paste your account ID and key. And so you can find all of this documentation from Split if you go to Split's help docs and just search for New Relic. So now let's talk about another use case. So wouldn't it be great if you could differentiate performance data between those who have exposure to a feature and those who don't? So by automatically enriching New Relic agent data with the state of a feature flag for an individual user in every transaction, you can draw graphs like this one, which show the difference in performance between those with the flag on and with the flag off. So here I can clearly see that requests with the feature flag on have a P95 of around 600 milliseconds, while requests with the feature flag off have a much lower P95, around 100 milliseconds. And now I can confidently ask the product manager to turn the flag back down to 0% and keep an eye on the production graphs. So this is something that we were able to fix quickly because you can see now that the service latencies are back where they should be, right? So the production incident is resolved and the team can dig into the specifics of why that feature was causing performance regression at their leisure, right? You don't have to wait for a rollback or a hotfix. You can just go in and turn off the feature flag, and we're back to the minimal latency state. And then the engineering team can take their time to figure out what was causing that added latency. So I just want to show you how to set up this transaction data. So we're going to use Java for this example. So all you do is add this impression listener into your Split client config from New Relic. And so to find this from our docs, you just go again to the integrations page, and on the right panel, click on New Relic. And you have some instructions provided on how to implement this. So once this is configured, the impression that's generated, so the impression is who saw the feature at what time, and I'll show you that in a second. It's going to be appended to all of your New Relic transactional data. And with that simple change of adding this impression listener, you're sending Split impression data into New Relic. Now we're going to see how we can work with this data. So I can go over to New Relic and check that some requests are indeed being served with the flag on, right? So here I'm showing a trend graph showing requests per second grouped by the state of that flag. So you can see that starting around 10 p.m., there was a small number of requests that are coming in with the treatment on, and that's expected, right? Because we're starting with 5% of users. I can also take a look at whether the feature flag has any impact on response time by rolling up response duration by the P95 percentile. Again, we're grouping by the state of our feature flag. And here we can see that something went wrong, right? So requests that have the treatment on have a noticeably higher response time, around 600 milliseconds with it on versus around 100 milliseconds with it off. But luckily, since I'm doing a Canary release, since I'm doing a percentage rollout, it's only impacted 5% of my user base. And then when we look at the overall response time, without grouping by that feature flag, you can't detect any significant impact, right? So at this point, I can go back to Split and turn the feature flag down to 0%. And I want to show you guys the transactional data in New Relic. So this is the New Relic One dashboard. So if you go into your dashboard, I want to show you how the feature flag evaluation is appended to the New Relic transactional data. So when I log into New Relic, I can click on transactions here on the left panel, and then I can see all the impression data coming in for this specific service. And then when I click into an impression, I can see that Split is appending what key was used in the evaluation. And many times this is either a user ID or an account ID. You can also see which split was evaluated and which treatment was returned. And this is where you see that. So once you click into the impression, you can see all of this data under the attributes. So you can see that for this particular transaction, we've shown you the key and all of the feature flag data from Split. So for this specific impression, the user was bucketed in the off for the feature flag, and you can see the Split key that was associated. And each transactional record has the Split data appended to it, so you can make better informed decisions. And so these examples show you why it's so powerful to have feature flag state available alongside your performance metrics, and why this integration between New Relic and Split is so valuable. Because when you can correlate feature flag state with other metrics, you can close the loop on your controlled rollouts and your Canary releases. And what that allows you to do is detect the negative impact of a change early. Like Steve was saying, we don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive in all of our processes. If something goes wrong, you want to be able to fix it and release a change, or release a fix before the user ever sees anything wrong or notices anything wrong. So closing the feedback loop in this way helps you fully leverage your investment, both in feature flagging and in instrumentation and monitoring. So with this New Relic and Split integration, again, you can implement the integration as a synchronous impression listener, which we saw in Java. You can see how the Split SDK feature flag impression information is appended to New Relic transactional data, which we saw in the New Relic One dashboard. And then with each transaction, new columns are automatically created for each split that was evaluated. So we saw one split that was evaluated with that value for the transaction representing the treatment received. And then the response time can be faceted by the split treatment for a particular split, which we saw in the graphs that were generated. And I think that is all that we have. I think we're going to take some questions now if Steve and Leah want to come back. Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you, Talia and Steve. Do you want, if you have questions, put them in the chat or the Q&A. But we do have one, which is, what about SDKs? Which ones does this integration support?
Yeah, so right now we support Java and Android. So the Java documentation is on the Split website, and we're working on getting the Android documentation up there. So right now we just support Java and Android.
Okay. Thank you. If anyone has a follow-up question to that, let us know. And then, so for someone, we actually did a poll earlier about who is using Split, who's using New Relic. So there were some that were fairly new to this. So they're wondering if there's free trials, like what's the best way to get started with minimum risk?
Yeah, I can talk about Split free trial, and then Steve, you can talk about New Relic. But for Split, if you go to split.io, you click on create a free developer account, you'll get up to 10 users in that account, and then you'll get unlimited front end, back end, and mobile feature flags. So you can create as many flags as you want. You'll get unlimited prod and staging environments, and then unlimited customer segments for targeting. So you get all of that with the Split free account.
From a New Relic perspective, I briefly touched on our new pricing model, and part of the new pricing model is a free tier. So essentially, you can come in and actually use New Relic for free. Single user, you get access to a certain amount of storage and the full stack observability. So you can play around with all the different products and test it out.
Great, thank you. What about any performance implications using Split? The idea of testing on production, just that you get actual users, real traffic, rather than testers. So is the idea of testing on production just that you get actual users?
Yeah, so with testing in production, basically you're creating a segment of users that you'll be able to test with in production, and most of the time that's your company's internal team. So at Split, we do it with our developers and QA and our internal teammates, and we make sure that our features are working in production. And then once we know it's working in production, then we turn on the feature flag, and we kind of remove the risk because we've already tested in production, and we don't use like these dummy like staging environments and QA environments. I can talk about testing in prod for like 3 hours, but
it's true. And then someone's wondering again about where to add the integration in New Relic, or is it just on the New Relic side or just only from Split? I don't know if we want to go back to one of the slides that talk about that, but.
Yeah, so the way that I showed it was from you go to New Relic and you get your account ID and key information, and then you put that into Split. Steve, was there another way to do this, or is this kind of the process that you guys have too?
Yeah, this is pretty much it, right? You get the account ID and then you pop it in. Yeah. And that's you just go and create your. Let's say you wanted to try it out, you open your free account, and you'd be able to gather that information and then easily put it into your code.
Okay, thanks. And if you need more clarification, just let us know on that. And then it looks like Split sends custom attributes to the NRDB transaction event. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And then, all right, so that prior question is answered. What about, can we select the users who visit our Canary branch using Split?
You can filter by them in New Relic. You can go in and see, like, these are the users who have the treatment on, who can see, this new feature, and these are the users who don't have this feature on, and you can compare the metrics between them and see how, things are working. And that's why I think like this observability is so important too, because you can make decisions based on what the two groups of people are doing.
All right, and a few more here. Any idea about the timeline to start supporting Python integrations?
I think if there's a need for it, then we'll build it. If you're interested, let us know and we can definitely talk about it. I think as the need grows, we'll be able to expand. But I think right now the biggest needs were for Java and Android, but definitely if it's something that you're interested in, let us know.
Great, thank you. We are at our half hour. This was wonderful and very informative. Thank you, Stephen and Talia. This has been recorded, so we'll send out a recording to, if you want to watch this again, along with some helpful documentation. And again, for the first 10 who arrived, you will receive some fun swag. Any last words for today? No, that sounded very dark, I'm sorry. Any final words for our audience today, Talia and Stephen?
No, the only thing I would say is just keep up with us on social media if you're not following Split Software or me. I would say just, follow us and keep up to date with all of the stuff that we're doing.
And from a New Relic perspective, like I said, using the free tier, it's available to you. And then in conjunction with Split, I think it's a great combination of really taking that risk out of deployments and really making your end users happy with your product and new services.
Great, thank you. All right, and I've also just added New Relic's Twitter handle as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day and a great weekend, and happy holidays if you're celebrating Thanksgiving next week. Bye.